My daughter chose her wealthy stepfather over me when I had an accident. She said she was busy writing exams, but that same day, she posted photos on her social media with the caption, "Fun time with sweet daddy." What happened next was rather unbelievable. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Sam Rogan from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I used to think there was nothing in this world I wouldn't do for my daughter, Naomi. From the moment I held her in my arms. Barely a crying 6-pound bundle with tired eyes and a grip that clutched my finger like she already knew she had me wrapped, I made a silent promise. I would be her shield, her provider, her everything. I didn't have much back then. Just a government job, a small apartment I paid off month to month, and a heart swollen with more love than logic. Her father left when she was 2, chasing a dream in another country that, in truth, was just another woman. I didn't chase after him. I had my dream in my arms already, and for the next 18 years, every decision I made had her name woven into it. When Naomi wanted to take ballet classes that I couldn't afford, I picked up evening shifts. I'd come home with my feet throbbing and my back tight, only to help her tie those tiny pink slippers and sit on cold benches during recitals. Her school field trips, her summer programs, her braces, all of it came from sacrifices I never vocalized. Because that's what mothers do, right? We give and give, expecting nothing but gratitude and a phone call on Sunday mornings. I never asked her to choose me. I just assumed that when the world divided into loyalties and lines, I would be the one she stood beside without hesitation. It wasn't until her mother, my ex-wife, married again that I felt something shift. Naomi was 16 then, and the man, Harold, was everything I was not. Tall, charming, with a banking job that wrapped him in tailored suits and foreign cologne. He drove a Tesla, took Naomi on ski trips, and didn't bat an eye at spending $3,000 on her 18th birthday dinner. I didn't hate him. That would have been too easy. I resented how easily he won her over. She started comparing things, our apartment versus their mansion, my well-worn car versus his showroom model, even my pasta versus his private chef's truffle risotto. The look she gave me changed too, not angry, just indifferent. As if the person who held her hand through every fever and heartbreak was now simply the man who paid the phone bill. Still, I swallowed my pride. I wanted to believe it was just a phase, teenage confusion tangled up in luxury. I reminded myself that I raised her with values deeper than money, that when the storms of life hit, she'd remember who weathered them beside her. When I had my accident, slipped on a wet floor at work and shattered my femur, I assumed she'd come running. I imagined her pushing through hospital doors with panic in her eyes, clutching my hand, maybe crying the way she used to when I scraped my knee fixing her old bike. But reality rarely matches our quiet dreams. That night, I called her. It was close to midnight, and I was in the hospital, groggy from painkillers and hungry for comfort. Her voice was calm, distant. "Dad, I can't come. I've got finals. You'll be fine, right?" I told her I understood. I lied. I didn't. But I told her I'd be okay, that she should focus on her exams. I ended the call with a shaky laugh, masking the tremble in my voice. I stared at the ceiling for a long time after that, counting the buzz of fluorescent lights to keep from crying. The next day, my phone buzzed. Not from her, but from an old friend who followed Naomi on social media. He sent me a screenshot. There she was, grinning in a sparkly dress beside Harold, holding a glass of champagne at his birthday party. The caption read, "Fun time with sweet daddy." The timestamp cut deeper than the lie. It was posted minutes ago. In that moment, something inside me shifted. A hollow kind of silence replaced the aching need to be seen. I stared at the photo like it belonged to someone else's daughter. That girl in the glittering gown, toasting to a man she called Daddy, wasn't mine anymore. Or maybe she never was. Maybe I'd just been a placeholder until someone shinier came along. Either way, I stopped waiting. I didn't cry. I didn't call her. I simply closed the photo, leaned back on the hospital bed, and let the machine beep in its monotony. I had spent my life proving I was enough. I didn't need to beg for love from my own child. It happened on a rainy Thursday, the kind that starts with gray skies and ends in silence. I'd stayed late at work, sorting out the last batch of case files before month end. Government work isn't glamorous, but I like the order of it. The logic, the rules, the rhythm of paper and stamps and signatures. I was on my way to the break room for a cup of coffee when my heel slipped on a freshly mopped floor. There was no warning, no chance to catch myself. 1 second I was upright. The next, I was staring at the ceiling with a sharp, burning pain exploding from my thigh. I knew it was serious. I've twisted ankles before, sprained knees, but this was different. It felt like my leg had split in two. They later confirmed it was a complex femur fracture. Clean break, they said. Like a snapped twig. I didn't feel clean. I felt broken. The ambulance ride blurred with morphine and flashing lights. At the hospital, I drifted in and out while doctors poked and pressed, their faces unreadable. The nurse, kind, middle-aged, with soft hands, asked if there was someone she should call. I gave Naomi's number. My daughter, I mumbled. Only child. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought she'd show up at my bedside before the surgery, her face tight with worry, clutching a bag of my things. But when I woke up post-op, the room was still. No flowers. No voice. Just the steady beep of machines and the sterile smell of antiseptic. I checked my phone. Nothing. I waited until evening before calling her myself. I remember the effort it took, my hand shaking as I held the phone, pain rippling through my body. She answered on the third ring, her voice clipped. Hey, Dad. What's up? I told her what had happened, tried to sound casual even though every word strained against my ribs. I had a fall, I said. In the hospital now. Surgery went okay, I think. Just wanted to hear your voice. She was quiet for a second, then sighed. I'm really sorry, but I can't come. Exams start Monday, and I'm behind already. You'll be all right, though, right? They're taking care of you. I swallowed hard. Yeah, I lied. Don't worry. Just thought I'd let you know. We hung up after a few more empty words. I stared at the phone screen long after the call ended. I felt small. Not because of the accident, but because of the dismissal. My daughter, the one I built my life around, sounded more concerned about her coursework than the pins holding my leg together. The betrayal didn't hit all at once. It seeped in slow. I kept rationalizing it. She's stressed, she's young, she doesn't know how to process emergencies. But the hospital was 10 minutes from her apartment. 10. I knew because I helped her move in, lifting boxes up those stairs, fixing her curtain rods, buying her groceries that first week. I paid for the apartment too. Rent, utilities, everything. Her college tuition? That was me. Her phone plan? Also me. I didn't mind, never had. But now, those facts started burning instead of soothing. I wasn't just forgotten. I was inconvenient. The next morning, I was lying in bed with a dull throb in my leg when a message popped up on my phone. It was from Martin, an old friend who followed Naomi on Instagram. He sent one line. Thought you said she was busy? Attached was a screenshot of her post. I clicked it, and the world narrowed. Naomi, radiant in a short gold dress, smiling up at Harold as he beamed beside her with a cake in hand. Balloons, glitter, expensive wine. The caption read, "Fun time with sweet daddy." I checked the timestamp. 10 minutes ago. I stared at it for a long time, unsure whether the pain in my chest was from the surgery or something far worse. She had lied. Not just dodged the truth, but looked me in the eye, or at least through the screen, and told me she was studying when she was at a birthday party. Not even a discreet one. A public, photographed, #party thrown for her stepfather, the man she now called Sweet Daddy. I felt like a fool. Like a broken, irrelevant relic sitting in a hospital bed while his only daughter toasted someone else. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there, letting the image blur as tears welled up on their own. It wasn't just the party. It was what it meant. She didn't even consider how it would look. Or worse, maybe she did, and just didn't care. I remembered all the nights I stayed up with her during flu season, the projects we did together, the way she used to crawl into bed with me after nightmares. Where did that child go? Or had she been slipping away slowly, and I just hadn't wanted to see? That evening, the nurse returned to check my vitals. "Any visitors coming today?" she asked kindly. I shook my head. "No one," I said. "I've got exams to respect." She didn't press further, But I saw something flicker in her eyes, pity maybe. I hated it. I hated being seen as abandoned, as disposable. I wasn't a perfect father, God knows. But I had shown up. I had given everything. I spent the night in a haze of painkillers and looping thoughts. I replayed that call in my head, the photo, the caption. I imagined Harold cutting his birthday cake, Naomi laughing beside him. I saw her lifting that glass, smiling like her world was full, and I was nowhere in it. That was when I made my decision. I wouldn't beg for scraps anymore. I had to start thinking like a man who mattered, to himself, at least. She had chosen where her heart lived. I would do the same. I was discharged 3 days later, wheeled out with a cast, a pair of crutches, and a quiet sense of finality. The sky outside was still cloudy, as if the weather refused to let go of that dreary mood I'd been swimming in. A friend from work, Charles, picked me up and helped me into my apartment. He didn't ask too many questions, just nodded when I thanked him and told me to call if I needed anything. I didn't. What I needed couldn't be delivered in plastic bags or phone calls. I needed something deeper: respect, maybe, loyalty. But those don't come from the outside. They come from the people you love. Or at least, you hope they do. Inside, the apartment smelled stale. No one had been there in days. I lowered myself onto the couch, wincing as pain rippled up my leg. My laptop sat on the coffee table, exactly where I left it. I reached for it and opened my documents folder. I hadn't looked at my will in over a year, but I remembered every word. Naomi was listed as the sole beneficiary. Everything I had, small as it was, would go to her. My savings, my pension, this apartment. It made sense when I wrote it. She was my only child. Who else would I leave it to? But now, sitting there with my cast propped on a pillow and bitterness spreading in my chest like ink, I knew I had to change it. It felt surreal, typing her name and pressing delete. The cursor blinked where it used to say Naomi Adebayo. That blinking line, so small, so quiet, felt louder than a scream. I updated the will to donate most of my estate to a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. The rest, I earmarked for charity and a few trusted friends. When I hit save, something in me settled. I hadn't stopped loving Naomi. That was the curse of parenthood. Your love doesn't vanish, even when it's beaten bloody. But I loved myself too. And for once, I chose me. The next morning, I made another decision. I pulled up my online banking and canceled every automatic payment I'd been making on her behalf. Her rent, her utilities, her phone bill, her streaming services. Tuition? That was already paid up for the semester, but the next one? She'd have to figure it out. I sent a brief email to the college, notifying them that I would no longer be the financial sponsor on her account. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. I was done explaining myself to people who didn't care to understand me. The silence from Naomi continued. No messages, no calls. Just more posts. Brunch with Harold, spa day with my amazing stepdad, smiling selfies in a car I hadn't paid for. I watched them once, maybe twice, then stopped checking altogether. She wasn't hiding it. That was the part that stung the most. She didn't even bother to pretend she still needed me. She had found her upgrade, and I had become obsolete. By the end of the week, I was getting around better on my crutches. I made a pot of jollof rice, watched a movie, even read a book. Life, it seemed, would continue quietly, steadily, without the person I once built it around. Then, just as I was starting to find a rhythm, the doorbell rang. It was a Sunday afternoon. I remember because the church bells were ringing faintly in the distance and I had just turned off the news. I hobbled to the door, unsure who it could be. When I opened it, Naomi stood there. Her hair was up in a messy bun, no makeup, eyes rimmed red. She looked younger than usual, more like the girl I raised than the woman in gold dresses on Instagram. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. I studied her face, waiting for the familiar warmth to rise in me. It didn't. All I felt was exhaustion. "Come in," I said finally, stepping aside. She walked in and sat on the edge of the couch, the same spot I used to braid her hair when she was little. Her hands fidgeted in her lap. I sat across from her, waiting. She looked up, eyes glassy. "I saw you canceled everything," she said. "My rent, my phone, everything." "What?" I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" I echoed. "You want to talk about why now?" She bit her lip. I know I messed up. I should have come when you were in the hospital. I lied. I was selfish. Her voice broke, and she started to cry. Real tears. Not performative. I'd know. I'd seen her cry over scraped knees and broken hearts. This was different. This was the cry of someone who finally realized they weren't invincible. I didn't think you'd actually cut me off, she admitted. I thought you were just mad. I didn't think you'd mean it. I leaned forward. My voice was calm, but every word was steel. That's the problem, Naomi. You didn't think. You didn't think I had limits. You didn't think I had feelings. You didn't think I deserved the bare minimum of honesty. You looked me in the face and lied while you were dressed up, dancing with the man you now call Sweet Daddy. And you didn't even think twice. She wiped her eyes. I was confused. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, I said. You did. And you didn't apologize until the money stopped. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched between us, thick and choking. Finally, she whispered, "So what now?" I took a breath. The hardest kind, the kind that decides what your life looks like from here on. Now, I said. Now, I live my life. You live yours. If you want a relationship, you rebuild it. With respect. With effort. But the support you had, the financial help, the automatic safety net, that's gone. You're an adult now, Naomi. And adults live with the consequences of their choices. Her shoulders sank. She nodded, slowly. For once, she didn't argue. She just sat there, tears sliding down her cheeks, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad." I nodded. I know. And that was all there was. Naomi didn't leave right away. After that apology, soft, trembling, not nearly enough to mend what she broke. She stayed on the couch, knees pulled to her chest like she used to do when she was a little girl afraid of thunder. I watched her from my chair, unsure what to feel. The daughter I raised was still in there somewhere, I knew that. But she was buried under layers of entitlement, resentment, and something far more corrosive, indifference. The kind of indifference that doesn't come overnight. It builds slowly, like plaque on a heart, until the love that once flowed freely gets blocked by a wall you didn't even realize was forming. "I didn't know you were so mad at me," she said quietly, picking at the hem of her sleeve. "You've been quiet for a while. I just thought you were being dramatic." I let out a bitter chuckle. Dramatic? She flinched. Not like that. I mean, I didn't think it would come to this. The will. The money. The rent. I thought you'd yell, or maybe block me for a few days. But you cutting me off like that? It felt cruel. I leaned forward slowly, my cast stretching as I shifted. Cruel, I repeated. Cruel is seeing your child choose someone else on the day you're lying in a hospital bed with metal bolts holding your leg together. Cruel is watching your only daughter post smiling pictures with a man she barely knew a few years ago while you're doped up on painkillers, wondering if you even matter anymore. Cruel is realizing that all your years of sacrifice meant less to her than one birthday party. She started crying again, but this time I didn't move to comfort her. I let her sit in it. I had done my time being the soft landing. Now she could feel what it was like to fall and find no one there to catch her. "I don't hate Harold," I continued, my voice flat. "This isn't about him. It's about you. About the choices you made. You called him Sweet Daddy in front of the whole world and didn't even think how that would feel to me. Not after everything I gave up for you." She buried her face in her hands. "I was just trying to fit in," she mumbled. "They're rich. His friends, his family. I never felt like I belonged anywhere, and when I was with them, I felt important. Like I finally mattered." Those words landed with a thud. I sat back slowly, a strange ache rising in my chest. So that was it. I had poured myself dry for years, and still she'd felt invisible. The irony? I had done everything in my power to make her feel like the center of my world, and she'd gone searching for validation in someone else's. The realization didn't erase the pain, but it added a layer of grief I hadn't anticipated. The grief of learning I'd failed her in ways I hadn't even seen. "You always mattered," I said softly. "But maybe I made it too easy. Maybe I protected you so much you never learned how to value what wasn't wrapped in glitter." She looked up, mascara smudged, eyes swollen. "Can I come back?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I knew what she meant. Not just physically, she wasn't asking to move in. She wanted back into my life. into the safety of being forgiven without conditions. But I had learned something in the past week, something brutal but necessary. Forgiveness isn't a reset button. It's a choice that comes with boundaries. I don't know yet, I said. You can't fix this with one apology. You need to show me. Not with words. With actions. She nodded, but I saw the flicker of frustration in her eyes. She was used to me bending, softening, folding at the sound of her voice. But that man was gone. In his place stood someone tired of being treated like a backup option. Things are tight now, she said after a while, her voice low. Without the rent paid, I'll have to figure out what to do. Maybe find a roommate. Sell some stuff. I don't know. I didn't offer solutions. I didn't tell her she'd be okay or offer to cover one last bill. I let the silence speak. She had made her bed, and now she'd have to lie in it. Maybe not forever, but at least long enough to understand what it cost to walk away from the people who loved you without condition. As she stood to leave, she hesitated. Can I at least message you? Check in? I nodded. You can message. Doesn't mean I'll always reply, but I'm open to hearing from you. That's all I can offer right now. She nodded slowly, then walked to the door. She turned once more, her voice barely audible. I do love you, Dad. I know, I said. But love without respect isn't love. It's convenience. And with that, she left. I sat alone in my apartment, the silence pressing against my ribs. I wasn't relieved. I wasn't angry anymore either. What I felt was harder to define. Something between sorrow and steel. A knowing. A certainty. That no matter how much I loved her, I had to love myself more. And this? This was what that looked like. The calls started 2 days later, first from her mother, then from my sister, then from an uncle I hadn't spoken to in years. Each one came laced with that same accusing tone, as though I'd committed some great sin by drawing a line in the sand. She's just a girl, her mother snapped over the phone. You're the parent. It's your job to forgive her. I let her rant while I stared at the cold tea in my mug, too tired to argue. Funny how I didn't get a call from her during my hospital stay, but now that money was involved, she remembered my number. I did forgive her, I replied finally. What I didn't do was pretend like nothing happened. There was silence on the other end, the kind that confirms a truth no one wants to say aloud. Then the line went dead. Word spread quickly. Naomi must have told people she'd been cut off, maybe dressed it up as abandonment, maybe left out a few key details, like how she lied to my face and toasted another man while I lay stitched and drugged in a hospital gown. I didn't bother correcting anyone. If they wanted to believe I was the villain, so be it. I was too old to play the martyr in other people's stories. But even so, it stung. I started receiving passive-aggressive messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Cousins, old neighbors, mutual friends. Some cloaked their criticism in concern. Just checking in. Heard about what happened with Naomi. Hope everything's okay. Others were more direct. How could you do that to your own daughter? She's your blood. Blood. That word made me laugh out loud. Blood doesn't pay the bills. Blood doesn't show up at the hospital. Blood doesn't make a person loyal. Love does. Respect does. And if those things are missing, then blood is nothing more than a shared history, a coincidence. I spent my days in physical therapy, learning to walk again with a metal rod in my leg. The therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Ifioma, was the only one who didn't treat me like I was fragile. You want to heal? She said during one particularly grueling session. Then stop holding your breath. Let the pain teach you something. She didn't know how right she was. Each step I took in that sterile rehab room became a metaphor. I wasn't just healing my body. I was reclaiming something that had been lost long before the accident. My sense of worth. My dignity. For years, I'd allowed myself to be defined by what I could give, what I could sacrifice. Naomi needed rent. I paid. She wanted a new phone. I upgraded. Her tuition was late. I scrambled to make it work. But now, stripped of my provider role, I saw clearly. Love that's based on transactions is nothing more than dependence. One evening, I received a voice note from Naomi. I stared at it for a long time before pressing play. Hi, Dad. I just wanted to say I'm sorry again. I've been thinking about everything you said. I've been talking to a therapist, actually. It's not an excuse, but I realize I've been trying to replace what I didn't have with what looks good. And Harold, he's not you. He never was. I'm sorry it took me this long to get it. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Her words touched something in me, but not enough to erase what had been done. Growth is good, sure, but sometimes growth has to happen away from the people you've hurt. Sometimes the lesson is in losing access, not just in learning the truth. A week later, I ran into her at the market. She was standing by the bread stand, her head down, hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She looked humbled. We locked eyes, and for a second, the world went still. No shouting. No tears. Just two people who shared a lifetime and now stood oceans apart. She walked toward me slowly. "Hi, Dad," she said soft. "Naomi," I nodded. She hesitated, searching my face. "You look better." "I'm getting there." She bit her lip. "I moved in with a friend. It's not ideal, but it's what I can afford for now." I nodded again. "That's good. Independence is a good teacher." She looked like she wanted to say more, but instead she just nodded. "Okay. Well, take care. You too." And just like that, we parted again. Not with a bang, but with quiet understanding. This time, there was no anger. Just reality. Sometimes relationships fracture beyond repair, not out of hate, but out of necessity. You realize that loving someone isn't enough if they refuse to meet you halfway. That night, I sat on my balcony and watched the city lights flicker like tiny fires. I thought about Naomi, about the years I spent building a life around her needs. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. What I felt was cleaner, peaceful almost. I had made a choice, and I was living with it. Alone, maybe, but free. It's strange, the way silence can begin to feel like a companion instead of a punishment. After weeks of emotional chaos, tears, arguments, unwanted advice from relatives, I found that I didn't mind the stillness anymore. The apartment, once too quiet without Naomi's laughter, now sounded just right. The click of the kettle, the occasional creak of the old floorboards, the distant hum of city traffic, these became my soundtrack. Peace, I realized, wasn't always the absence of noise. Sometimes, it was the absence of needing to explain yourself to people who refused to listen. The physical pain in my leg had dulled to a persistent ache, the kind that reminds you you've lived through something. The doctor said I was healing ahead of schedule, and the therapist nodded in approval every time I walked without the crutch. But the real healing wasn't in my bones, it was in my heart. For the first time in years, I was learning how to live for myself, not through someone else. I didn't wake up checking for messages. I didn't end the day wondering if I had done enough for someone else. I was finally measuring my days by how I felt, not how I was perceived. Naomi still reached out, sparingly. A message here and there. Small, quiet attempts. Just checking in. Hope your leg's okay. Or, saw this book you used to read. Thought of you. I answered once or twice, politely. No anger. No emotion. Just enough to acknowledge the connection without reigniting what was lost. I didn't block her. I didn't shut the door completely. But I also didn't open it wide again. That door had once been the front line of my identity, and now it was simply a door. She could knock if she wanted. That didn't mean I had to let her in. The final conversation came on a cool Friday evening. I was at home, folding laundry, my shirt smelled of eucalyptus from a new detergent I liked, when my phone rang. It was her. "Hi, Dad." "Naomi." She didn't ask how I was. She got right to it. "I just wanted to say thank you." I paused. "For what?" "For holding your boundary," she said. "It took me a while to understand, but I get it now. You weren't punishing me. You were protecting yourself." There was a long silence between us. It wasn't awkward. It was full. "I'm glad you see that," I said. "It wasn't easy." "I know. And I'm not calling to fix anything. I guess I wanted to say I respect you now, even if I didn't act like it before." My throat tightened, not with tears, but with a quiet, sad gratitude. She was growing. I could hear it, but it wasn't my job to carry her through that growth anymore. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "It means more than you know." She sighed. "I'm going to be okay, you know? I've picked up some extra shifts. My friend helped me budget. I even opened my own bank account, finally." I smiled faintly. "Good. That's good." We talked a little longer. Nothing deep. Just weather, work, and mutual memories. When the call ended, I sat for a long time, staring out the window at the slow, golden dip of the sun. I thought about how hard it is to unlearn decades of being needed. how painful it is to choose your own well-being over the people you love. But I had done it, not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of necessity. I took one last look at the framed photo on my shelf, Naomi at age 9, smiling with 2 missing teeth, arms flung around my neck. That girl loved me with her whole heart. I believed that. And maybe, deep down, the woman she became still did. But love that ignores your pain isn't love. It's convenience in disguise. And I'd finally outgrown being someone's convenience. These days, I take walks in the park with my cane, nod at familiar neighbors, sit on the bench near the fountain with a good book. I've even started painting again, nothing fancy, just colors and silence. The peace I found isn't loud or proud. It's quiet, earned, and sacred. And I protect it the way I used to protect everyone else. Because in the end, the hardest lesson I had to learn, the one no one prepares you for, is this. Sometimes the bravest thing a parent can do is let go. Not out of spite, but because they finally realize they deserve peace too. And for the first time in my life, I was finally living in mine. If this story moved you or reminded you of your own journey through family, boundaries, or betrayal, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful, real-life inspired stories that speak to the heart. Your support helps bring these stories to life and keeps the conversation going. See you soon in the next one.